He wasn't on Forbes. He didn't own a bank. He wasn't even licensed to manage funds. But somehow, Jho Low slipped through the cracks of global finance, laundered $4.5 billion, befriended Leonardo DiCaprio, threw parties for Paris Hilton, and financed the Wolf of Wall Street, using money stolen from an entire nation. It sounds like the plot of a movie, and that's exactly what he wanted you to think. Because while the cameras rolled, Jho Low was writing his own script, One, where he played the billionaire, the kingmaker, the mysterious producer. But in reality, he was the ghost author of a global scam, running lines from behind a curtain of forged documents, offshore accounts, and silence bought with diamonds. No violence, no masks, no getaways. Just one man, a lot of charm, and a trail of luxury so absurd it looked legitimate. So, what happens when a con artist decides to launder billions? Through Hollywood? If you're into real-life scams with private jets, Oscar nominations, and a cast that didn't even know they were in the con, subscribe now. Hit the bell icon, and let's dive into one of the most twisted tales the film industry has ever accidentally starred in, because the greatest trick Jho Low ever pulled was making the world believe he wasn't there. To most of the world, Jho Low was nobody. Just a wealthy Malaysian with a British accent, a baby face, and a closet full of Tom Ford suits. He wasn't on the cover of Forbes, didn't invent anything, and certainly wasn't an official member of any royal family, though he was always close enough to one. But by the time anyone really asked who he was, he had already stolen over $4.5 billion, partied with Hollywood royalty, and financed one of the most infamous films about financial crime ever made. His story begins with a government-backed fantasy, 1MDB, or One Malaysia Development Berhad. Founded in 2009, the fund was designed to help modernize Malaysia. Think infrastructure, renewable energy, education. But instead, it became a piggy bank for the elite. Jho Low, despite not having any official role in the fund, was its shadow puppeteer. He convinced then Prime Minister Najib Razak, his old schoolmate's father, that he could attract Middle Eastern investors and turn Malaysia into an economic powerhouse. What he actually turned it into was a crime scene. Jho Low's scam wasn't quick and dirty. It was sophisticated, global, and ridiculously theatrical. He set up shell companies in the Seychelles, British Virgin Islands, and Cayman Islands. He created fake joint ventures, drafted fraudulent documents, and made the money vanish and reappear, always somewhere shinier. The funds cycled through banks in Switzerland, Singapore, Luxembourg, and New York. No red flags, no hesitation. Billions were moving across borders, like they were buying groceries. But Jho Low didn't want to be rich in private. He wanted to be seen. So he bought his way into Hollywood's most exclusive rooms. He showed up at Cannes, popped bottles in Vegas, hosted masked balls in the Alps. He was the mysterious host behind $100 million birthday parties where Britney Spears jumped out of cakes and Kanye performed on private islands. His yacht, Equanimity, was worth $250 million. He gifted a $3.2 million Picasso to a friend just for helping him meet Leonardo DiCaprio. Ah yes, DiCaprio. Because Jho Low wasn't satisfied just partying with the stars. He wanted to fund them too. Enter the Wolf of Wall Street. Red Granite Pictures, the company behind the film, was co-founded by Najib's stepson. But it was Jho Low who quietly provided the money. Stolen money. The irony. The movie, a 3-hour explosion of sex, drugs, and securities fraud, was essentially a money laundering operation in disguise. A masterpiece funded by criminal proceeds. About criminal proceeds. DiCaprio thanked Jho in his Golden Globe speech. Martin Scorsese shook his hand. The Oscars came calling. No one asked where the money came from. Or if they did, they liked the answer. Don't worry, it's all legit. Meanwhile, Jho continued collecting. He bought diamonds for Miranda, Kerr, rare art for himself, a $35 million condo in New York, a penthouse in LA. He reportedly tried to date models by sending them Birkin bags by courier. Some accepted. Some asked for two. He was nicknamed the Asian Gatsby, but even Gatsby didn't buy Brando's Oscar. Joe did. Behind the scenes, the truth was unraveling. Investigators began to notice strange patterns. A few whistleblowers emerged. The name Jho Low kept popping up in places it shouldn't. And while most people were still sipping champagne on his dime, a few had started chasing the smoke that led straight back to Malaysia's darkest financial secret. Jho Low, always two steps ahead, sensed the shift. And like any good magician at the end of his act, he began preparing his final disappearing trick. At first, Jho Low's story was just another tale of excess, the kind of outrageous luxury that tabloid readers either envied or dismissed. But by 2015, the cracks in the facade were no longer cosmetic. They were structural, and they were spreading fast. It started with whispers, small inconsistencies in public records, anonymous tips, unusual banking activity. Journalists at the Wall Street Journal and the Sarawak Report began asking uncomfortable questions. How did a man with no official role in 1MDB end up moving hundreds of millions through the world's most prestigious banks? How did Malaysian development funds end up in luxury condos in New York, art galleries in Switzerland, and the production budget of The Wolf of Wall Street? And more urgently, why wasn't anyone stopping him? In July 2015, the Malaysian public was rocked by reports that nearly 700 million had been transferred directly into Prime Minister Najib Razak's personal account. Najib claimed it was a donation. Jho Low went silent. The world, meanwhile, began to realize that what was unfolding wasn't just some harmless rich kid joyride. This was a heist of state-level proportions. By 2016, the U.S. Department of Justice had launched a full-scale investigation. They dubbed the case the largest kleptocracy asset recovery initiative in history. Their findings? Over $4.5 billion had been misappropriated from 1MDB. And they had the receipts, literally. Wire transfers, luxury purchases, shell company, trails. The DOJ wasn't playing around. They went after the toys first. A $39 million Manhattan penthouse, a $100 million yacht, a bombardier jet, a painting by Monet, a mansion in Beverly Hills, a penthouse in London. The list read like a billionaire starter pack, but every item traced back to stolen money. Even The Wolf of Wall Street itself became evidence. The film, in a twist so meta it defied belief, was now part of a money laundering case. The DOJ moved to seize its rights, its profits, and anything else they could trace to Red Granite Pictures. DiCaprio, suddenly in the hot seat, began cooperating with authorities. He returned gifts, a Picasso, a Basquiat, and, yes, Marlon Brando's Oscar statuette, which Joe had given him during a dinner party like it was a bottle of wine. Miranda Kerr turned over millions in jewelry. Swiss bankers were indicted. Hollywood lawyers scrambled. The scandal went from whispers to screaming headlines. And just like that, Jho Low became the world's most wanted party boy. But he was nowhere to be found. Some said Macau, others mainland, China. Rumors spread about him living in luxury under Chinese protection. He was reportedly spotted in a karaoke bar, laughing with officials. Some claimed he had changed his face. Others that he was negotiating asylum. But no selfies, no tagged locations. Just silence. Interpol issued a red notice. Malaysia revoked his passport. The US indicted him. He shrugged. Because somehow, Jho Low still wasn't in handcuffs. As the legal noose tightened, banks and celebrities tried to rewrite their history with him. They claimed they never really knew who he was, that they were misled. But the money trails told a different story. One of willful ignorance, gleeful participation, and a global elite that never asks questions when champagne is flowing. Behind the scenes, the Malaysian government was in chaos. Public trust was collapsing. Protesters took to the streets. Najib clung to power with increasing desperation. And all the while, the man at the center of it all was watching from somewhere else, untouched, unbothered, and possibly planning his next move. Because when the spotlight started to burn, Jho Low didn't blink. He vanished. For most of his extravagant life, Jho Low had been a whisper behind closed doors, a name that appeared in wire transfers and party guest lists, never in courtrooms or police records. But as the investigation into 1MDB unfolded like a poisoned flower, that whisper became a scream. And the ripple effect? Catastrophic. Let's start with the banks. You don't move $4.5 billion without help, and Jho Low had plenty of it. Goldman Sachs, one of the most powerful financial institutions on the planet, was at the center of the storm. Their Southeast Asia chairman, Tim Leissner, had cozied up to Low in ways that violated nearly every internal policy imaginable. In exchange for his cooperation in facilitating 1MDB bond deals, Leissner received millions in kickbacks and showered his mistresses with luxury gifts. Goldman Sachs ended up paying over $5 billion in fines and settlements. Leissner pled guilty to bribery and money laundering. Another senior banker, Roger Ang, was also convicted. And while the bank insisted these were the actions of rogue individuals, internal documents revealed that red flags had been raised multiple times and ignored. Why? Because the deals were too profitable to walk away from. Then came the luxury markets, auction houses, real estate firms, private bankers, many of them unwittingly, some knowingly, helped Jho convert stolen funds into assets that couldn't be traced as easily. Rare wines, a private jet, a $250 million yacht, the Equanimity with a helicopter pad and spiral staircase. It wasn't just about spending. It was about laundering, embedding dirty money into things so expensive no one would dare question the buyer. By now, international headlines were piling up faster than subpoenas. The public devoured the scandal, a baby-faced playboy who outmaneuvered banks, governments, and Hollywood. Think Catch Me If You Can, but with more diamonds and less charm. Documentaries were in production, books were being written. Jho Low had become a brand, ironically, not unlike the celebrities he once idolized. Back in Malaysia, the political house of cards was collapsing. Najib Razak was voted out of office in 2018, ending a near-decade-long reign clouded in suspicion and scandal. Days later, he and his wife were indicted. When police raided their homes, they found over $270 million in luxury goods, cash, watches, handbags, and jewelry that made Versailles look modest. It was the largest seizure in Malaysian history. The new government promised to bring Jho Low to justice. But where was he? He had become a ghost. Despite global warrants, Interpol notices, and frozen assets, Jho Low remained elusive. He was reportedly living in China under protection, though Beijing denied it. US officials speculated that he had deep ties to Chinese intelligence, possibly trading information for safe harbor. Others believed he'd undergone cosmetic surgery, or that he was dead, or hiding in plain sight, using identities purchased on the dark web. But the strangest part? He kept contacting people. Through intermediaries, encrypted messages, and mysterious third-party lawyers, Jho Low offered deals. He claimed he could repay part of the stolen funds. He even tried negotiating with Malaysia and the US for immunity in exchange for cooperation. His tone wasn't desperate. It was confident, almost arrogant, as if he believed he could out-negotiate two governments like he had conned half of Wall Street. The arrogance wasn't unfounded. For nearly a decade, he had operated with total impunity. He had proof that the global elite would look the other way if the wine was good and the bills were paid. He had made world leaders bend, bankers look stupid, and celebrities thank him on stage. And now, he was about to test whether he could talk his way out of it all. By the time most fugitives hit the news, their story is winding down. Not Jho Low. He didn't go down in handcuffs. He went down negotiating. After years of hiding, presumably in China, though no official has confirmed it, Jho Low began floating a new narrative that he was just a middleman, a facilitator, not a thief, not the architect. Just someone caught in a political crossfire between Malaysia, the US, and powerful interests in the Gulf. According to him, he didn't steal the money. He just helped move it. Nobody bought it. But what he offered next raised eyebrows. Restitution. Jho Low, through a rotating door of international lawyers, began proposing deals. He'd return assets, pay back billions, cooperate in investigations. In exchange, no jail, no extradition, just a clean slate and a quiet life somewhere warm. He even tried offering a multi-billion-dollar settlement to the Malaysian government, structured in a way that would save face for both parties. Some insiders claimed the deal almost went through, until it didn't. Meanwhile, his legal team flooded courts around the world with lawsuits, injunctions, and statements designed to reshape public perception. They argued he was being unfairly targeted, that the media had Hollywoodized the scandal, and that other bigger players were being let off the hook. But the mountain of evidence, wire transfers, shell companies, luxury receipts, made it almost impossible to spin. Still, the stalling worked. With each delay, the case became harder to prosecute. Witnesses disappeared. Bankers lawyered up. Documents were buried in jurisdictional nightmares. The longer Jho Low stayed hidden, the more untouchable he became. And the kicker, some people started to miss him. High-end realtors, luxury dealers, even a few celebrities whispered, off record, that he'd never hurt anyone, that he was generous, that he threw the best parties, that he funded art and film and gave people their big breaks. He became a twisted kind of legend, part villain, part myth, part cautionary tale whispered over cocktails. The equanimity was eventually seized and auctioned off. Red Granite Pictures was dissolved. Najib Razak is currently serving a 12-year prison sentence. But Jho Low, still gone. Still tweeting through lawyers. Still trying to claw back his reputation one settlement at a time. In 2023, Malaysian officials revealed they were still trying to negotiate with him. "It's not ideal," one anonymous source said, "but recovering money is better than nothing." That sentiment summed up the whole mess. The systems designed to stop this kind of theft were so broken, even a partial refund from the thief seemed like a win. Hollywood, meanwhile, moved on. The same industry that once toasted him quietly erased his name from history. His donations vanished from websites. Celebrities deleted photos. But the irony remained. The man who bankrolled The Wolf of Wall Street had pulled off a real-life heist so outrageous, it made the film look tame. Today, Jho Low is still a wanted man. His Interpol Red Notice remains active. The FBI still considers him a key player in a historic financial fraud. And billions remain unaccounted for. But the world has a short memory. And Jho Low? He's betting on that. Because in the end, he didn't just steal money. He stole time, silence, and attention. He bought people, moments, headlines. And now, all he has to do is wait. Long enough to be forgotten. Or long enough to return. There are con men who fake resumes. There are grifters who sell snake oil. And then there's Jho Low, who stole a nation's future and turned it into a party invitation. He didn't kick down doors. He didn't wave a gun. He used champagne. He used charm. He used silence. And the world let him. Because when money walks into the room wearing a tuxedo and quoting Scorsese, very few people ask for receipts. This wasn't just a story about theft. It was about complicity. About systems so eager to profit, they forgot to protect. About justice chasing a man with better lawyers, better jets, and more practice at vanishing than anyone alive. And maybe that's the real trick. The most dangerous criminals don't look like villains. They look like guests, and they leave before the check arrives. If this story made your jaw drop, or just made you question everything you thought you knew, hit subscribe, tap the bell icon, and join us for more twisted tales the world tried to forget. Because this is just one thread in a very expensive web.